Hello, my name is Raynor. I'm the Director of Business Advising here at CEI. We help entrepreneurs in Maine start and grow their business. We offer informative workshops and interactive multi-session peer groups available live on Zoom or in person, as well as one-on-one business advising. If you'd like more information, please visit our website at ceimaine.org. Today, I'm here to talk about pricing in two parts. This is the second part of the series. In the first part, we covered internal pricing, which is based on costing and a break-even analysis. And this second section is about external pricing, which is really conjoining your market proposition, your value, and how you communicate that with your customers. Skip over the first part. We're going to dive right into the second. So external pricing starts with a competition review. So you look at your competitors and try to analyze what they offer and where there are gaps in the market and how you can position yourself. So I think there's a lot of value in understanding your competition based on specific industries and benchmarks, which is a national perspective. If you have questions on that, please reach out to our advising team. We can identify some of those benchmarks for you. And then understanding how your customers view competition, right? So this is not a one-to-one, you're a hamburger shop, and there's a hamburger shop down the street. It's important to understand that your customer is who determines who your competitor is, right? So your customer will say, well, I'm looking for a hamburger today, or they'll say, I need lunch. I need lunch quickly. Where is your value proposition place you in the order of your competitors, and then identify what your customers are looking for with that. That identification of where you fit really becomes the crux of how you communicate your value to your customer and identify who your target audience is, right? So for a service provider, it might be difficult because there are other service providers out there. And you say, okay, well, I have to compete on price because that's the only thing, in my time, is worth X to me as a service provider. What's important in that aspect when you're considering the perspective of your customer is that a customer pays you for their time, not yours, right? And that's especially important for somebody who does service like an electrician or a plumber, right? So those service providers are not only providing the service in an hour or two of work, but they are saving the customer. If it was me, I would try to look it up on YouTube. I'd spend an hour or two researching. I'd spend 4 or 5 hours trying to do it myself and going to Home Depot or Lowe's multiple times. And then I would call the plumber, right? So the purpose of that statement is to capture that I, as a customer, am not paying you for an hour and a half of your time. I am paying you for 2 days of my own time back, right? So when you're establishing that value proposition, or you're pricing based on labor cost or something, understand that the customer is paying for more than the labor. They are paying for your experience in alignment with that labor. When you're looking at those competitors, a lot of people use something like this to understand how to talk about their value and their proposition, right? It can be fast and cheap, and the implication there is that you're not high quality, that you're bad quality, but it's fast and cheap. You can be fast and good, which is expensive, and you pay for that speed and quality. You can be cheap and good, but that's slow. And then I put impossible in this middle, right? To say, can you be all three? Some people can, right? You see that most often with proprietary information, a new technology, entry of a new product into the market, where you could be fast, cheap, and the highest quality, right? You have some way of reaching the same quality, and you're able to do so more quickly or more efficiently than your competitors. The problem with that is that there is an implication with price. And so if you are fast and good and you position yourself cheaply, then the customer will view the quality as diminished. It's just part of capitalism, unfortunately. Think of diamonds, right? You can make a diamond in a lab for a couple bucks a carat, and it is indistinguishable from other diamonds, but nobody wants to pay that because the implication of an affordable diamond is that it's not worth anything, even though it's, chemically and perfectly designed to be indistinguishable. There's no market for it, right? So the implication of price is very important to support the quality. So when I say impossible, there are aspects of that that could be possible, but think long and hard before you put yourself there. So when you have your competitor analysis and you go through that process and you say, okay, if a customer is looking for me, they might also consider these things. And you are able to identify 3, 5, 7 alternatives to what you provide. You can place them in this from that customer's perspective. Where does competitor X land, and what is their communication around that? Where is customer Y, or competitor Y land? And two things for that. One, you can see where there is saturation, if a lot of your competition ends up in one aspect of this, and you can see where there's opportunity. Maybe there's a chance that there are no competitors, so there are no alternatives that are leaning into a different side of this kind of Venn diagram. I'm going to overstep as an advisor a little bit and say, don't go for cheapness. Don't go for being the most affordable alternative in the market. And the reason for that is that if you're watching this, you're likely a small business, fewer than 10 employees. You're likely, relatively new. A lot of my clients are startups. You just simply do not have the synergies of scale to compete in a global market and be the most affordable. There will always be an alternative that is more affordable than you, right? And the reason that those businesses make their competitive advantage affordability is because they are able to fine tune their process to the point where cutting a penny will save them millions, right? And they're constantly honing down on how to make the most affordable product. If you are new or you are small or you do not have that global approach to buying your raw materials or your ingredients, or you're not able to produce at scale with a large workforce or an automated workforce, then you are simply racing to lose money the fastest, right? So if you are trying to position yourself from a marketing approach as the cheapest in the market, it is diminishing returns to the point of bankruptcy, right? It's just a bad idea. So unless you have some new, brilliant application of a new technology or product that is unmatched in the market, then there's no long-term success in positioning yourself as the most affordable in the market. Now, quality means a broad range of things. It is hard to simply say I am the best. So I included a couple of things here that might be worth considering. How do you hone in on quality? You can be fast, or you can be good, or you can be both. And the question there is, how do you convey good? And what makes you stand apart in a world of good products? So product design, performance, aesthetics, special features, uniqueness, conformance. Conformance means they always get what they're looking for. Service design, if you're a service provider, then it is about convenience. It's about reliability, responsiveness. And these things will give you an idea of what your customer is looking for and how to set yourself apart from your competitors, right? Whatever it is that you land on, that you decide is your competitive advantage that you will defend and becomes part of your intrinsic mission to being a business owner, should follow the entire customer journey, right? If you want to be the most courteous service provider, then from the first time they hear about you, to your training manual for your employees, to the website, to the phone call and how you answer your phone call, to when you meet with the customer and talk through the customer and their experience with you, to when you depart and you follow up with them and check back in. are all of those things supporting and restating, your qualitative value proposition? We're going to dig more into marketing and we'll get to pricing, don't worry. But marketing is the communication of value to the people who need to hear it, right? A lot of people think about marketing. I used to hate marketing coming into, my role as kind of an financial analyst, but marketing, if you capture it and you do it correctly, is a wonderful opportunity to share what you do best. At its worst, it is intrusive, right? When marketing comes across as intrusive, it is the wrong audience, the wrong message, or the wrong channel, right? You're telling the wrong people your value, right? So if you know your value proposition, then you can start to find who is looking for that thing that you offer, right? And then the marketing is helpful. It's saying, hey, you need to hear about me. You're probably looking for the most courteous plumber in Maine, and I'm them. I'm that person, right? So work with me if you ever have plumbing needs, right? So that ability to know your message, to know your so what, will help you identify the who cares. And anytime you are out marketing, it's never 100% success. You will always have people say, I'm not interested in that. That's great. That's an opportunity to refine that process and say, okay, I'm sorry for bothering. You're not who I'm looking for. You're not interested in me. I'm not interested in you, right? So you can design this messaging and design this outreach in a way that constantly reinforces that, but also gives you an understanding of who your ideal customer is, right? Throw this out there as a way to kind of start down that marketing journey, right? And the first 2, 3 years of a business, primarily it is active. You can have the best product or the best service in the world. And if nobody ever hears about you, you will have no customers, right? So you have to be out there talking about marketing, reaching out, getting in front of people, understanding who is looking for your product and who isn't, understanding who wants your service and who doesn't, right? That is part of refining it. It is not a judgment on you. It is an ability to understand where your value is best heard, right? And we have whole marketing seminars where we dig into this. After 3 years, 4 years, that begins to self-populate those customers. You get your return customers, your positive customer reviews, your referrals, word of mouth, and you can lean more into this kind of passive approach to marketing, which is positioning yourself, reinforcing that message, sharing your knowledge, building a referral network, right? So there is this trade-off at the start. You need to be out there. 100% of your marketing is paid either with money or with time, and you are getting in front of potential customers and communicating that value proposition. And eventually there's a tipping point, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years in, where that grows, the passive side of that, and your market knowledge grows, your Google reviews, your Facebook followers, whatever it is, reach a point where it feeds your customer list, right? You should always have about 20% of your marketing efforts and budget active, finding new clients and refining that process. But eventually, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, 80% of it will be self-fulfilling and return customers, which is a wonderful place to be. Yeah, I had a slide for it. So with that outreach, that initial work, when you are reaching out, when you are communicating, when you are understanding what your customers want, I encourage, a multi-tiered approach. It's called, the pillars of marketing. In this example, I've got some newspaper ads, social media, door hangers, phone calls. These are all things that I am paying for or doing myself, right? And I'm trying a lot. One of the best questions that you can ask a new customer is, how did you hear about me? Starts a wonderful conversation, a little bit of dialogue, but more importantly, it says, what is working? Where did you hear about me? How did I spend some money and reach this individual customer? Right? I had a client a while back that I said, what do you do for marketing? And they said, oh, we've run an ad in the Sun Journal once a month for the last 20 years. And I said, wow, how many clients come to you from the Sun Journal? And they were like, oh, I don't know if we've ever had any clients come from that ad. It's like, that's a lot of money to spend, nothing against the Sun Journal, fantastic publication, but that's a long time to be spending on money on something that you are not measuring. Right? So when you are marketing, you can use different discount codes or different URLs as a way to say, where are these people coming from? I'm spending effort. I'm doing this shotgun approach. I have multiple pillars to my business, but who's actually coming to me? And that ability to measure marketing is when I started liking it, right? So because then you know where your money is best spent. Each one of these pillars essentially is a funnel where you say, okay, this Facebook ad reached, 10,000 people. Of the 10,000, how many visit my website? How many ask for a quote or put an order in the cart? And how many become customers? So that funnel, every one of those conversion points is a ratio, and again, can be measured and can be performed and improved. Right? Say, okay, I reach 10,000 people and only, 5 of them are reaching my website. Well, that's not a great conversion, right? Is it the wrong audience? Is it the wrong message? Is it the wrong time? Right? I can send the same message Monday morning and the same message Friday afternoon and see, does that funnel widen a little bit, right? So that's where you start getting some more bang for your buck, is when you can measure those funnels and expand them. You say, okay, I'm spending money, I'm spending time building this market. What is working? What is resonating with my clientele? That's a lot of work to do. I've got multiple pillars that I'm trying to fill with funnels and measure the outcomes. How am I supposed to make 320 phone calls? Right? That's where a marketing calendar comes into play. You say, I can't make 320 phone calls, but I can do 20 a week. Like, okay, how many weeks is that? Let's spread it out and plug it in. And if I have 2 hours a week dedicated to my marketing work and being active in my business and on my business, how much can I do? And where am I being consistent with that and measuring outcomes and measuring performance, right? So that input of cost or time becomes a marketing budget. The input of the different funnels becomes your marketing calendar. How often do I do these things? I had a great realtor. This was pre-COVID, so a while back, but they were having a lot of trouble because they hated making outbound phone calls. And that was really the driver for their business, residential outbound phone calls. She was fantastic at the analytics. She understood what a home was worth. She could market it and price it. She just hated getting the listings. And she hit a point in her business where she was uncertain about whether she wanted to continue or not. And she decided she would only pay herself $5 per phone call she made. And what that did was two things that I thought were really valuable. And I loved sharing this story. First, it closed the dopamine length of time, right? So instead of waiting till a closing, she'd make a phone call and she'd get a little rush of dopamine saying, okay, I just made $5, right? For those service providers, for that long-term marketing, a lot of the time that no hits harder and hurts more before we get to the yes, right? So you hear the no, you hear the no, you hear the no, and you just give up, right? Before you ever get to the yes. And so what can you do to move that little bit of benefit up to lessen the hurt of the no? Right? So that was one thing that was very effective. The other thing was, she'd say like, geez, I have a soggy salad for lunch. It's 11:30. I'd really just want to go get a hamburger. She'd make a couple phone calls. She'd go get a hamburger. It'd be Friday afternoon. She'd be like, I want to go out with my friends this weekend. I got to make some money. I'm going to make some outbound phone calls. A no, really fast no, same $5, right? Leaving a voicemail, same $5. Someone hanging up on her, same $5, right? So that really changed in her own mind the value of reaching that no and of maintaining these marketing outreaches. Pricing, right? So So why is this so important with pricing? Why are we talking about the ceiling and pricing when we're just talking about marketing this whole time? Once you understand how people hear about you and where you can communicate and how you drive people in to your business, we talked about in the last session floor pricing. How do I get to break even and how do I stay in business and still be here a year from now? Your ability to communicate value to your customers is a ceiling, right? That is where the better you are at communicating and understanding what your customers is looking for, the more they are willing to pay for what you offer, right? So that is the difference between an internal approach and an external approach. And this is where it gets really fun, right? So if you are building your product, building your service, and you are charging for it, and you are understanding how your customer wants to hear about you and wants to hire you or pay for your product or your service, and you build relationships with them, right? They buy into what you are offering. That's marketing. Effective marketing is relationship building. It's the right people for the right product or the right service. And they want more, right? They ask for it and they're finding you and they're responding to your marketing. And you get exhausted and you're booked out. And now you have 3 weeks of work on the books. And now you have 8 weeks of work on the books. And now you're tired. And so many people stop marketing at this point. That's the natural response, absolutely natural to being full. I'm busy. I'm busier than I need to be. I don't want to pay that $200 social media push that's on my marketing calendar. What am I going to do with the customers? I can't, I'm just going to end up sending them elsewhere or telling them no, right? So you stop. I think there are two better alternatives here. So the first alternative is growth and expansion. Right? You say, okay, I have more demand than I have supply of time, and so I'm going to hire somebody. Usually the first hire is like an admin position, which frees you up to do the operational piece. Maybe it's more. Maybe it's someone on the floor. Maybe it's another producer. Maybe it's a team, a crew under you doing the work. And you can expand that way, right? So expansion is a fantastic option. Do not stop marketing. You want people to hear about you. You want people to understand your value, and you can expand. The other alternative is there is a natural supply and demand cutoff, which is pricing, right? So you can say, I am communicating my value very effectively. People are more than willing to pay for my service. Can't tell you the number of clients I have who I say, when was the last time somebody said no to you based on your price? And they say, oh, nobody ever says no to my price. It's money left on the table, right? I understand there's a mission side to your work. There is a desire to support your community, absolutely. But do your costs go up regularly? Is labor more expensive than it was a few years ago? Are your raw materials more expensive? Is your insurance more expensive? Is fuel more expensive? Yes, those things go up and they never come back down. Right? So your customers are willing to pay you what you are asking. That is an effective reflection of your value proposition strategy, of how well you are communicating the difference between your cost of goods and your price. If you communicate well, then that difference is self-explanatory. I charge more than it costs me to provide this service or do this work because I'm very good at it, because I have a lot of experience, because I'm unique in some position, because I'm the most polite and courteous person in the market. Whatever you're doing to communicate that value is working. Don't stop doing it just because the demand is outpacing your supply. Charge a little bit more, right? You can charge more until people say no, and then your demand catches back up with your supply and you're doing the same work for more money, right? That is the value proposition marketing pricing cycle. And you should have people that say no to you based on price. There are always customers who are looking for the cheapest whatever in the marketplace. They want that upper sphere, that upper circle of cheap. That's all they are looking for. And if they pay for your service, I'll also tell you they're going to be some of the more difficult customers because they want to analyze every quote that you give them. They want to cross it out and make it more difficult, and it's just not worth it. Right? You should allow people to find the cheapest alternative, and it shouldn't be you, right? Because at our size, the clients that I work with will never be the cheapest, and we shouldn't. And there is an aspect of technical precision, and there is an aspect of humanity in having a small business that provides local direct services, and they get to know you, right? And that automatically means that you should be emphasizing that and leaning into it and building your community around the customers that you want to serve. Again, price sets an expectation of quality. So if you underprice yourself, it does not matter how good it is. The assumption is that it's not as good as the more expensive version on the market, right? So your quality is inferred through your price. And so you are doing a disservice to yourself by trying to compete on price and price alone. So that is how I would approach pricing from an external perspective. It is understanding where your customers are looking, what value that you are able to communicate to them, and how well that they understand the value you bring. The more that they are willing to pay you, that is a reflection of good communication. It is not a reflection that you are lying to them or misleading them in any way. Right? Your customer reviews, satisfaction, everything will be tied to that ability to communicate and execute based on where you see yourself and position yourself. Another great way to use pricing, just to end on, especially for service providers, is to offset seasonality. I have quite a few service providers who have huge peak seasons and then valleys where they are very slow. Some of my best contractors that I've worked with manage that very well. And they say, okay, it is peak season. I will provide you this quote. And, for this amount, for X, I can have my team work nights and weekends, and we can fit this in and we can get this done for you. If you are willing to wait to my off season 6 months from now, I'd love to have something on the books to maintain my labor, to keep my team together and on board through the off season. I can get it done for you in that time for 80% of X, right? It's a wonderful way to not tell a customer no, to say, here are your options. And you'll be amazed at the number of customers who just say, sure, get it done. I'm willing to pay the higher price. And you're like, all right, great. Or if they're willing to wait, again, that really smooths out your revenue. And now you have something on the books for September, October, January, March, whatever your off season is. Say, hey, I'm willing to take a little bit less if I don't have to lay off a team member and try to rehire in the spring when my work comes back in, right? So that pricing model, especially for service providers, can be very flexible. And it's fine to share that with customers and say, here's what the options are for you and how do we best move forward. Thank you. Very happy to walk through these two methods of pricing and how to use your value proposition to drive pricing and test your pricing and find that ceiling. Again, if 100% of your customers are saying yes to a price, raise it. Raise it until there's a point where there are customers saying no, and you're losing margin. And at that point, or you're losing volume. At that point, back off, and that's a sweet spot for you until your marketing catches up and your value proposition catches back up, right? So be flexible, engage the customer, communicate with them often, and reach back out and emphasize that value. Again, if you're more interested in that internal price approach, I'd encourage you to watch part one of this two-part series in which we talked about costing, direct costs, indirect costs, break-even analysis to cover your overhead, and that floor value, which says I have to charge this just to stay in business. So those two price points, I have to charge this to stay in business, and here is how well I'm communicating my value, will give you two wonderful starting points to find where you need to price your product or your service. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. CEI offers free business advising one-on-one. We're here to help, and we love doing so. Thank you very much.